Hey, everybody, sorry for the late start, I should say, as we're getting going here. Just drove down to Fort Lauderdale again and got up at 5 in the morning and took about 10 minutes to get ready and just headed down. So I was making good time. But you know how it is, Dwayne, from South Florida. You after you hit Palm Beach and you're coming into Lauderdale, construction, and I'm
Everybody's out Christmas shopping already. I read a post the other day on Facebook where somebody put Walmart expects you to buy a turkey, shop for Christmas items, and wear your Halloween costume all at the same day because they switch stuff out so much, so fast. So
yeah.
thought that was kind of thought that was kind of humorous.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it just, you're looking at that radar, and I'm watching the time like, uh-oh, I'm going to be getting there at about 9 o'clock now because traffic just came to a screeching halt. And sure enough, there was an accident.
Yeah.
And, what can you do? So I'm here. We got started a little late. We'll just continue on with this. And a couple of things going on that I think our audience will be interested in. It's just this business requires, it isn't a business, it is a investment as well. So it's kind of a combination. And anytime you're looking at that, you do have to understand that sometimes you've got to be patient and play things out, let them roll out. And other times you get surprises, and it's just this different dichotomy of what can happen. Because in this business where we're buying loans, sometimes there's an early payoff. That's always a nice surprise. And sometimes it goes the other direction, and you have to initiate foreclosure, and then someone declares a bankruptcy. And you've seen that, Dwayne, as we've gone through this journey together where we've just taught a lot of people, and sometimes it can get wrapped up and just start to freak out, like, is this ever going to work out?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, you just got to navigate your way through it, right?
Yes, absolutely. So I mean, it's just the due diligence that you have to go through, and
Hmm.
just have a little patience on, believe in the process, and knowing what you've learned to be able to say, hey, I know what's going to happen. I know it's going to take place. I just, need to follow this recipe and this path of that you set out for him, and just it's just the nature of the beast. I mean, every transaction that you do, especially in if having to go through that, it's not there are going to be some hiccups. There's going to be some decisions that you want to make, but you just got to stay on that same path, and just have a little patience in the process, and it'll come through.
Yeah, a couple things on that, and that's why I've always said, we hope for best case scenario, we prepare for worst case scenario, right? And if worst case scenario happens and you're prepared for it, and you're still making money, then it was a viable deal to begin with, and that's the way you have to look at it. And the second thing I need to say on that is there's other people in this industry that teach, but they only teach one side of the business. They just teach non-performing notes, or they just teach performing notes. And you can't approach this business that way. It's going into a fight with one arm tied behind your back, because bad notes can go good. Sometimes you help them go good. Sometimes there's good notes that go bad. So education wise, you really have to be well rounded in this industry so that you are prepared in case a good note goes bad and you haven't learned non-performing notes. Your goal might not be to invest in non-performing notes, or not initially, but you have to understand them, because notes can go that way. And we just never know, because that variable that we can't control is what's happening in somebody's life. They lose a job, COVID happens, somebody gets divorced, somebody passes away. I mean, those are things that we can't control as investors. Now, again, we've done a series, you and I, about notes versus sort of stuff. Well, same thing. If CEOs of certain companies were to pass away or something, I mean, the stock is just going to drop like crazy. You can't prepare for that. Life kind of happens. So that's why in this business, our part of preparing for worst case scenario is really taking a good solid look at as to what is the collateral worth. That's what saves us in this business, is what is that collateral worth? Because if I have to take it back, am I okay with that? And of course, if I'm paying 30 grand for a note and the house is worth 100,000, even if property values drop 20%, I'm still in good shape. And then on top of that, if somebody loses his job or any of those other scenarios I painted, you're still good. And that's right. So due diligence is really what this is all about, when you're preparing to buy these things. So I thought I'd show some people, because it's fresh on my mind with one of my clients, Michael. Michael, and Michael's a really good guy, young man, and he's been with me. I don't know. I'd say somewhere around 2 years, give or take. And he's built up a portfolio. He's probably on 8 to 10 notes, and has done good with those. So one of his notes, I had a session with him the other day. I do these Zoom one-on-one sessions with my clients, where I just walk them through deals. And Mike's been doing that with me for a couple of years. And so he was updating me a couple of days ago about a couple of his deals. So before he started, he goes, "Well, I want to talk to you about this bankruptcy note that he's been working on for about a year, by the way, everybody." And he goes, and you could see a grin come over his face. Is like, "But I got an interesting letter yesterday from a title company." He goes, "It looks like one of the first notes I bought with your help is going to pay off early."
Mm.
And he bought it at
There's a Christmas present that come early.
yeah. And he got it at a good discount. And what I mean by discount, we measure that, everybody, by something called investment to balance or investment to unpaid balance. And that's what builds up this reserve or bonus yield. Because the gap that you buy a note at, if the unpaid balance of a note is 40,000 and you're buying it for 30, that gap of 10 grand stays over a long period of time. Eventually it starts to close, but it stays over a very long period of time. So if that loan were to pay off early, boom, now all of a sudden you're getting another $10,000. So this was, I don't know what the time frame was on this loan, but it was a longer term loan. So we'll just say 10 years. I'm not sure if it was 10 or more, but we'll say 10 years. But he's owned it for almost two to the month, by the way, 2 years to the month, 24 months. And he's got this gap in there, which is a pretty good size gap. Now, on this note, he was making about 10.5%, which in the yield spectrum that we're dealing in right now is towards the lower end, right? Things are trading between 10 and 12 typically. So he's making 10.5%, which some people in other fields like money lending and stuff like that might kind of turn their nose up and go, "Well, 10%." Which I think is a pretty good return. But some people are going to look at that and go, I don't know if that's enough. I'm making 14% lending money. Okay. And then what happens when you get paid off? You got to lend again. You got to lend again. You got to lend again. So he's got this good, solid money backed by a solid asset. So he's very safe. And what happens? He gets paid off the whole loan in 2 years. Now, I don't have the full payoff just yet because, again, I just spoke with him as either yesterday or the day before. But his yield's going to go absolutely through the roof. He was making 10.5% per year for 2 years, and then he gets a bonus payout of $10,000 on top of getting all of his capital back, of course, everybody. So it's a huge bump, and you'll see that case study probably another time or another presentation that I do somewhere. But yeah, you're right. I love when people get those.
Yeah.
Same guy also on that call talking with me about the Chapter 13s. And this is one thing Dwayne and I have had to really educate people on over the years, which is, for us, BK13 is an attractive thing, right? Because it means they're going to work out a pay schedule and this person's going to catch up. And many times you get two cash flows out of it instead of one. They pay you for the loan moving forward, but they also have to pay you back all the money that they haven't paid in the last 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, however many years that it is since they stopped paying.
Yeah.
So he's dealing with that as well, but with the understanding that you just have to let the dance play out. You know, you can't rush a bankruptcy court. It's not going to happen. They work at their own pace. A lot of times when a borrower does declare bankruptcy, their lawyers are very good at slowing things down, bumping back appointments. Judges are pretty gracious with that, going, "Oh, cool. I don't have to do that tomorrow. Great. I'll take it, I'll hit
Yeah,
the golf course
yeah,
or
for sure.
something later, whatever that is. And we'll just reschedule it, right? So that's kind of what's happened with him on the other deal. But at the end of the day, he's going to end up making more money. It's just got to play its way out. So when you have deals like that, you can't freak out and go, "Oh my God, am I going to lose my money? Am I going to?" No, 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 no. Everything's going to be fine. It's actually going to be
I'll,
for you, but you got to play it out. Now, I'm not just saying sit back. You obviously have attorneys when you're going through bankruptcy as well, and you want them to, to push it and keep it moving forward. But just understand there's a time frame with that.
yeah, so I wanted to get back on you. You were talking about both sides of the business, and so when talking to students, they say, "Well, I'm just going to work on the performing side," and I say to them, "Well, suppose the deal goes bad," and it's kind
Yeah.
of like their question is, "So which one do I do first?" And I always laugh at that because it's not first or second. What should I do? It's kind of like what position and direction do I go? And I said, it's like having a black belt in karate. You need to know, you need to be able to have counter moves in case something happens. How do I work it out? And kind of just like, your point right now is just, dealing with the process and letting it go through.
Yeah. The more knowledge, obviously, that you have in anything, the more solutions that you have if problems pop up. So education wise, you should know the industry in its totality. Now that can take some time. I get that. But that's what you ultimately want to learn is the business in its entirety. Don't go into a course or even invest in a course that just teaches you one side. You're going in with blinders, and eventually that's going to burn you because now something happens and you're just totally on your own. You don't know how to handle it, and that's going to lead to bad decisions. Bad decisions are going to lead to loss of money. So you don't want to do that. So you learn. That's why my education course is 20 hours. It's really, really extensive because I teach you the business in the totality of what it should be. Now, once you have that, then you can start to figure out, okay, long-term goal, maybe I'm going to do a mix of notes, performing notes, non-performing notes. But you got to start somewhere. So that's where we can reel it in and say, okay, based upon you, what you want to accomplish right now, the amount of time, the amount of money that you're going to invest right now, let's drill down on what that first note should look like. And for a lot of people, sure, it's a performing note, which is logical, because if you're new to the business, why buy a note that comes with not only the process of learning of how to buy and close a note, but add on top of that problems that you're going to have to deal with when you can just buy one that's working, buy
Sure.
one
Yeah.
that's got a good payment history. And then what sometimes happens, what happens is early payoffs. So if you don't think early payoff happens enough, I just went in my computer and put in early payoff, and I've got 3 PowerPoints just on that one topic. And I create these things just to illustrate certain points. So I'll create, by the way, a case study on every single deal, every single closing that my students do. That's all I'd be doing every day if that were the case. I take the ones that have some stories. I take the ones that can show you what happens. This one's up in South Carolina. And I remember this note because it's another client of mine. He's got a bigger portfolio. He's got at least 24 notes, and got an email from him. Beautiful property, $150,000 in value in up in South Carolina. Purchased it in with his IRA for 25 grand, and then the payoff comes really quick on this one. You can see he had it in 2023 in September, and by February 2024, he's got a payoff. So he only received 5 monthly payments. Now, that wasn't his intent going in. He was looking at this for a longer term investment because he had actually bought this note where he's making a 13% annualized return. See, he would have rather had this note hang out there for a longer period of time, but that's something that you can't control. Now, he was kind of jokingly saying, well, I got a problem. He goes, I got an early payoff on that note I bought last year in South Carolina. And the joke was he really would have rather kept the payments, but then he got this payoff of $29,000.
That
Okay.
makes everything go away worrying about a monthly payment.
Well, he
Somebody
goes,
stroking
so
you a check for 29 grand.
yeah. So he goes, my problem is I got to find another note now because that one paid off early, and he goes, I was making a heck of a good return. So, again, he invested $25,000 and he collected, what's that, 2 grand essentially here, and then collected another 29,000. So 31,000 on a $25,000 investment in 5 months, what's your return? Pretty dang good. So 31,160 was the total payoff there in 5 months. So his 13% annualized return became a 55% return simply because he got the payoff and he's got that extra bonus yield in there. And I'm telling you, I've seen some notes and it baffles me where some people are buying these notes without a discount. They're paying par. And I always tell my clients, if you pay par and the note pays off early, what did you get back? You don't want to put out $25,000, in other words, and get 5 payment, make 2 grand, and then get your money back, right? You want to build in a discount. In fact, people call this the paper business, but really, Dwayne and I know this as the discount mortgage business, the discount note business. Why? Because we discount these things because mathematically it makes sense. We deal in the time value of money. So we have to discount these things. And you can see the payoffs go great. So the people scoffing at, oh, somebody's making 10%. I bet you that the yield that Mike's going to have is going to be higher than 55%. And his money wasn't sitting on the sidelines waiting to get a 12% yield when he could get something good at 10.5% right now, solid, backed, and a good discount, because one day, guess what? If it pays off, your yield's going to take care of itself. Again, just sticking on this theme here. Early payoff on a small turnkey note. So even small notes, if you're a smaller individual investor, it's hard for you to go lend money to somebody. If you've got less than $30,000 or so to invest, it's hard to find investors who are buying houses in that price range and trying to make money on that sort of stuff. But with notes, you can find very well seasoned notes, especially today, where
Yeah.
that's no problem. So this is a place up in Detroit, in a good area of Detroit, 1,300 square feet. Original sale was back in 2015. So back in 2015, this property sold actually for $24,000. Now, I don't know who's watching us on Facebook or where they're from. I know that seems very strange. You look at this house, you can tell it's well maintained, brick house, 2-story for 24 grand, and you're probably going in my area, that would be $800,000, whatever. That's why we go to where the deals are. So you've got a house here that was undervalued back in 2015, went through all of the paperwork as we always do, doing our due diligence, as we were talking about earlier. They've only put back in 2015, $700 down on this property, by the way. But that's fine because they've been making payments on this thing since 2015. So I really don't care that they only put $700 down. If this note was pretty new, sure, I'd like to see more money down. So the note was written back in 2015 for 23.3 at 9.2%. We'll call it, okay, for 180 months, $240 per month. So a nice little small note here. Purchased it in October for 15 grand, okay? 114 payments were remaining when they purchased it. The property, since 2015, Detroit's made a heck of a good recovery.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, they're really coming back.
Yeah, the city did a good job of getting rid of tearing down the zombie houses and some big investors up there, billionaires are putting a lot of money into it. So that property that was once valued at 24, now worth $80,000, but they only owe Oh, I forget what they owed on this one. Let's see, he bought it for 14.9, so we'll see he owed in just a minute. And by the way, used an IRA. So again, a good buy on the yield end, 14% interest on the monthly payments, but this one also paid off in the fifth month. Now, he had no inclination. There was nothing in the paperwork that would indicate that. We don't have, when you're looking at buying a note, we don't have direct access to the borrowers. It's not like we could call them and say, what do you plan on doing? And in fact, if you owned this note and you knew in 5 months that they were going to pay it off in full, you probably wouldn't sell the note, right? So the note owner that my student bought this from had no idea this was coming either. So these folks either sold the house or they refinanced or they came into some money and just said, let's just pay off this remaining 14% because the remaining $15,000, whatever it is, because again, they were paying a higher than bank interest rate on this thing. So the return on investment payoff, you can see there was the bonus yield that was in there. He received those payments, so he got $4,000. Now, $4,000 on let's say a $15,000 investment over 5 months is 28%. If you annualize that, you're looking at a 67% return on investment. So payoffs, boom, they hit that bottom line. And I think it's an underrated feature that most note investors who are new don't really think about because you don't know if you're going to have an early payoff or not, but it's always nice to have that in the background. And when you start to build up a portfolio, those things will start to happen. This was one that I predicted an early payoff on, and I remember this one. This is a Florida note. So this house, the history of it was this was a foreclosure, right? Had nothing to do with my client at all, but just the history because we researched that, right? So this property was a foreclosure. It was purchased at a deep discount by a real estate investor, and that real estate investor just sold the property as is with seller financing. Okay, so we had nothing to do with the property at the time, but we do investigate kind of the history because we want to know the story behind the numbers. You know, that's how you master this business. So the property was then renovated and was now worth $100,000. And part of that big growth, by the way, was because they changed the zoning and it went from residential to commercial space. So just by this person who bought the property saying, I want to put my business office here, and it's in an area that there's really no other homes around it. There's some commercial stuff around the corner. So he petitioned the county to get this rezoned to commercial. Just taking it from residential to commercial does impact, obviously, the value
Absolutely.
on this, for
Absolutely.
sure. So they did put a substantial down payment down. So the 45,000 was just the note. They actually brought to the table $31,000. Okay, so when they bought this, they put 30 something thousand dollars down with a $45,000 note. That's pretty darn strong. Because they put, that's a lot of skin in the game, as we say, right? There's the paperwork confirming it, trust but verify, right? We can see the whole settlement statement there and what they brought to the table. The $45,000 was the let's see, the sales price. Sorry, they put 14,000 down. My bad. $45,000 sales price, and they brought 14,776 to the closing. Sorry about that. I was looking at the wrong line. But still, on a $45,000 sale, bringing $14,000 down, that is a substantial down payment. So we felt good about that. Looked at all the documentation, looked at the surveys that they did, looked at the taxes were all prorated at the closing, the insurance was done, there was a title policy, warranty deed, all the affidavits were there. Everything was just in perfect order. We looked at the note. That's back in November 2019. So the note itself was $30,000 at 8%. Okay, so a $45,000 sale minus the down payment and such and the closing costs created a $30,000 note at 8%, $424 per month, but they put a balloon in there. And the balloon, for those who don't know, is you amortize a loan for a longer period of time to lower the payments, say 180 months. But then you say, but after X number of months, the entire principal balance is due. So we'll keep your payments low in the meantime, but you got to pay the whole thing off. So the loan was originated in 2019 in November, but the entire balance was due on November of 2022. So we have a short-term balloon here. And my thought was going through this paperwork was, okay, they put a substantial down payment. The guy's putting his business here. I even looked up the guy's business, saw it was doing very well. And I said, I bet you anything, this guy's going to pay this off early. Okay, so he's going to pay this 424 per month for a period of time, but he's going to pay that balloon off before it's even due. And I just had a feeling about it because when you put the whole story together, you kind of get the sense that this guy just did the financing just as something quick so he could get his business moved in there, get organized, get up and running, and then boom, go ahead and just pay off this loan. All the security was there, all the mortgage, non-homestead because it was a business. Order a BPO, you can see the value, as I said, $100,000 right there. And now, as I already mentioned that. So good looking deal. Got all the title report done, no mistakes, no surprises, which is what we love because when I teach the due diligence, Dwayne, as you know, we basically do our own title report. You know, we want to know more about this note than the note seller does.
Well, I mean, you got to in this business. I mean, it gives you a better understanding of what you're buying. You just, well, case in point, you were able to just have that feeling that it was going to pay off early. You've seen so many, you've done so many. And so it kind of, you know, typically you can smell some of that out of if with your experience of saying, okay, this is going to pay off early. Just, you got to be able to do all the due diligence and you'll just get better at it.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm telling you, the story combined with it, it just starts to put together a picture because now you can start to really think about what's most likely, what's least likely to happen, and make some decisions based upon that. So this was the first note I got this client into, and I knew it was going to be a great note. Uh, by the time he got it, there were only 14 payments remaining, and then that balloon, so the original loan, remember, was for 2 years. The guy had already made a year's worth of payments, almost a year's worth of payments, and there were 14 left, a year and 2 months left. And I said, this is prime time. I said, this guy's his business has been there a year. It's established. He's got his address changed, and we'll just keep an eye out. So sure enough, we got in there for $20,000. And again, to get $20,000 for what? To get 14 payments of 424 plus a balloon of $20,000. Pretty simple deal.
Yeah.
And then I get the notice I just copy and paste the actual email that my client sent me. So my borrower paid the balloon on the Florida loan. Check was deposited into my Roth IRA. The balloon was a little lower here because they paid it off early. What is the process of moving forward for the loan payoff, schedule a one-on-one, et cetera. So boom, got another payoff. I was August, September, October, November. So we paid it off 3 months early, but still early. Nonetheless on that, because there's only 14 payments left. So bottom line though, because of that bonus yield, he did receive 12 payments. That's $5,000. In this case, which you've rarely seen me do, Dwayne, is I told him self-service this loan.
Really?
That was another thing. There was no escrow being held, and there was
Yeah.
only 14 payments left.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah.
don't
To
muddy
pay
the
a
water.
servicing company for that. I mean, and not only that, it gave him some good experience.
Oh, totally. Totally. Yeah. He's not scared of servicing a loan again. And the
Right.
guy I can't remember if I think he just sent him checks or something like that. Cause this
Yeah.
client who bought this happens to live in Florida as well. The payments were always paid on time and pretty simple to self-service this particular loan.
Yeah.
And then he got his payoff. So the 21 plus the 5,000 bucks there you go. That's 31, almost 32% return. Okay. So early payoffs, they do happen. It's something that you can consider. Sometimes in a few of those examples, we had no idea.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things. In other cases, like this one with the balloon, there was a suggestion there that there was going to be some kind of early payoff at some point in time, and it just made sense to go in, negotiate a good return, and then if you get the early payoff, great, return goes even higher. If you don't, still made a good return.
Yep. It happens, like you said, we see people not expecting to get a check in the mail, and then all of a sudden, well, your first scenario, he waited. This was a deal that he did years ago and it paid off, so you just don't know. Everybody's circumstance is different. They may had a bonus from work, or maybe they sold something and they had some cash that they wanted to pay it off, or, oh wow, you know what, I only have 6 payments, let's just pay it off.
Save some
Everything's
money,
good,
sure.
and let's just take the money and pay it off. So we could use their mentality is, I could use that 900 or 700 or $1,200 a month, so I don't have to worry about our mortgage payment anymore. And you just don't know. You don't know.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you, here's another little secret. I've recommended this to people in certain scenarios too, where I said, hey, look, they don't owe that much on this loan, but a lot of these loans you see everybody in seller financing are written at 9 and 10% interest.
Right.
Even bank rates are high right now, but they're not 9 or 10%.
Right.
So I tell people, maybe contact a mortgage broker in that area and let them know that this person has a higher interest rate loan, and maybe they can send them a little flyer or something like that going, hey, we have home equity lines of credit right now that we're writing at 6.5%, and that might save somebody money on their loan. It certainly would lower their payment on the interest rate. And if you pay the loan off early, obviously you save some money there as well. So you're really doing a service for that person. If they decide, go ahead and fill out whatever application and get the loan refinanced, you get an early payoff, they get lower payments and a lower interest rate. Not a
Mhm.
bad thing to suggest,
No,
to,
absolutely.
to look at,
Absolutely.
yeah. So sometimes that happens. All right. Well, that went quick. Man, that was already about 40 minutes, huh?
Yeah.
That went quick. Very good.
So I know that we have talked about in the past about a live event. It looks like you and I are going to have a meeting with some partners,
Mhm.
so to say, come either today. I think it's today or tomorrow. That's going to be big news rolling out. I think it's going to be a good event. And then we also have some appointments for contacts for more assets. So that's going to be really good. That's going to be a big announcement that you're going to be able to roll out, where we're going to be able to have more exclusivity on assets that we're creating relationships with other companies. So we're always trying to, help our existing students, also new students that come on board. What's your asset inventory look like? What's some of the benefits for me going with you guys versus just doing this on my own? And so we're taking a lot of that heavy work, because as you and I both know, companies just don't come on board and say, hey, I want to be exclusive with you guys just because you have a training business. What do you offer your students? What's the closing rate? And your closing rate right now of being able to have students purchase assets they're pretty strong. And so the companies that we're working with, they recognize that and want to do business with you. So two big announcements we're going to be making soon, which I think is going to be impactful.
Yeah, and we'll post that on Facebook and other social media. And of course, you can always reach us at info@kevinshortell.com. That's info. It should be in the description of this live feed as well. info@kevinshortle.com. And we'll let you know when we're going to do that live event, because it's going to be live on Zoom. right? So we're not going to do a live on Facebook on that. It's going to be, I don't believe, we have a conversation today, but I believe it's going to be just, live on Zoom. So you'll have to register for it and get an invitation and that sort of thing. It's going to be a good one. I don't know if we're doing 2 hours or 4 hours. So we still have some things to discuss, as Dwayne said, but we are going to get that out to you. So thanks everybody for listening, watching, and following on Facebook and other social medias. And don't forget, I post this also on the podcast, Real Estate Without Renters, and you can see the video portion again if you'd like over on YouTube, posting it on there as well. Very good. That's all I got, Dwayne.
That's it.
Okay, man.
Talk to you
Good to see
soon.
you. Okay.
Bye.